Alex,
Yes, sir.
uh we're moving up. We're branching out. As the tree of life, we are branching out.
Indeed.
We have a big announcement starting with this episode.
We have a couple big announcements.
We do.
Yeah.
Oh.
One is for the podcast.
Yeah, one is for the podcast.
Yeah.
We will be branching out. We will be uploading our show to more platforms. We will be branching out to Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, as well as Amazon Music. So if you prefer to listen on those platforms, it is now available to you, starting with this
It will be soon.
yeah, it will be. This episode will be available on those platforms, and I'm not sure if it's going to port every episode over immediately or if it's going to take my own hard work and dedication, which is severely lacking sometimes. But we'll figure it out. But hello, everybody. Welcome to Life the Complete Story. As always, I'm your host, Tyler, joined by my lovely co-host, Alex.
Greetings, everyone.
Alex has more announcements, maybe?
I do have more announcements. So I will ask with Tyler a quick question. So, what is the goal of life?
Reproduction!
Yes, sir. Is to live long enough so that way you're able to pass your genetic material on to the next generation. And to not make it gross, I'm having a kid.
Alex has succeeded in the goal of life.
Yes.
Passed on genetic material to the next
Yes.
generation.
So, yes, my wife and I are expecting a child at the beginning of this coming year. So, January 2026. So, just to let you all know now, there may be a small gap in the episodes, the beginning of the new year. Temporary setback. But, yeah. Not to bore everyone with
But since
my personal life, but yeah, we got another episode here today. Tyler, what do we have in the news today?
Today in the news, we are talking about. Make sure I'm on the right episode here. Heat waves. If you didn't know, the past couple weeks in the eastern U.S., more like the whole U.S., massive heat wave, upwards of 95-ish degrees most days. It's felt like. So this isn't this most recent heat wave. This is a previous one. We're talking between 2014 and 2016, talking about a heat wave that shook the Pacific Ocean. This kind of messed up a whole bunch of things, mostly ecosystems. Kind of, what am I thinking of? Bottom up trophic shift. The heat wave affects the plankton in the ocean, and that plankton, with there being less
fed on by everything.
Yeah. So there's less plankton, there's less food for everything. So the pyramid that was like this big is now this big because the producer level has shrunk tremendously.
If you don't have, yeah, and Tyler said that bottom up, if you don't have the bottom of the pyramid, the top of the pyramid's got to shrink or otherwise it's going to collapse.
Yes. So this is a compilation, give or take, of about 300 studies kind of showing like the different effects that this rising ocean temperature has from this heat wave. Most notably, kelp forests withering. Kelp is a very large plant in the Pacific Ocean. Not so much in the Atlantic. Most of the kelp forests that I can think of are in the Pacific. That's a big ecosystem. Lots of fish live in those areas. Lots of crustaceans, other things of that nature. Echinoderms use it, which means that another thing that happens is as the waters get warmer, tropical climate organisms like we'll talk about some later on the episode, and some of our ribbon fish and oarfish, they live in tropical regions. Since the overall water temperature is getting higher, they can branch out further, which is shifting some of the more temperate organisms north towards more Arctic waters, and it's shrinking more median ecosystems that aren't quite Arctic, aren't quite tropical regions, as well as just a die-off of, popular marine organisms, whether it be blue whales or what have you. Similar to what I said earlier about like that trophic pyramid shifting. Obviously, most large whale species are not herbivorous, but they're filter feeders.
Yeah.
And the krill they eat, I believe, does feed on the plankton. That would make the most sense.
Yeah.
So that's a secondary consumer in a blue whale, we'll say. Less krill eating less plankton. There's less plankton for the krill to eat, so there's less krill for the whale to eat. So there's less whales, in short. But this was an article published by the University of Victoria on July 21st, 2025. Anything else to add, Alex?
No, you covered it pretty fantastically.
This also causes some economic loss as well because these fisheries that we're using in the Pacific are not able to catch as many fish.
Yeah. Yeah, and like Tyler said, it is a just like ecosystem wide shift. Like with the things that can't move, like obviously the seagrasses and the kelp, thus affects everything above it. The sea stars, which have already been having problems with there's a disease that causes them basically to like rip their own limbs off, and so there's been already been massive declines in sea star populations, and this is just making that worse, as well as everything up to the fish eating birds. That it is a total ecosystem impact.
Yeah, total shakeup.
Yeah.
But that's going to do it for my nature in the news today. We'll move on into our lesson. Today we're talking myctophiforms and lampreforms. So that word lampreform, you might think it's lampreys,
It's
but we've
not.
already covered them. So it's not lampreys. But our first group of the day is going to be the myctophiforms. These are going to be lanternfish and the like. Most of it is in that lanternfish family. There's a handful or so that fit in the black chin family. Neoscopelidae has 6 species in it, so we're not really going to talk too much about it today. But as I said, there's 2 families consisting of 250 species, most of that being in the lanternfish family, and 30 genera. That's a perfect picture.
That is a fantastic picture.
They are smaller fish, inhabiting pelagic and benthopelagic zones, as you can kind of make out by the picture Alex has shown. For those of you who are who are audio only listeners, it's a lanternfish. Kind of, you can see why it gets its name. It has spots of photophores throughout its body, most of it around the mouth and the chin area, but also along the entire ventral side. They have big eyes and a big mouth, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. As I said, large eyes, direct. These eyes are straight out, like when you think of eye formation and where they're placed on the body. Predators have their eyes forward so they can see the prey. Prey have their eyes on the outside so they can see the predators. Straight prey fish.
Makes sense. If they're small, they're
Yeah.
not they're gonna get eaten more than do the eating.
But that is the general overview of the entire order as a whole. We'll get a little bit more into the Myctophidae, which is that family of lanternfish. As I said, they're slender and compressed, covered in silvery scales that are prone to flaking. I believe I read in the notes while I was taking them. They have a blunt head and round eyes, so less ovular, more circular. Typically small, typically small finned. They're not very long in the fins, but they do have a higher dorsal fin. Uh, Most members possess a gas bladder, but as they reach adulthood, it typically either degrades away or it fills with a lipids at maturation. So it fills with fats and becomes a fatty gas bladder, which,
It basically turns from a gas bladder to more of like a fat deposit.
yeah. Um, and all but one species possess photophores. I forgot to label the species. That's my bad. Obviously, not the one we have pictured. And these photophores are paired, so they match on both sides, and uh, they're concentrated along that throat and head region, as I said earlier. They undergo a diurnal vertical migration. So we've talked about this a couple weeks ago, maybe. The different deep sea organisms that do that migration from, their typical benthic, bathypelagic zone where they typically live, and at nighttime they'll go up towards the surface to feed on the plankton rather than uh, going up in daylight and being more vulnerable because it's a bright silver fish with lights. It's gonna stir up
It
some
stands out.
attraction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have another picture for us that shows those photophores off very nicely.
yeah, exactly, perfect. So they'll travel a little bit less than 1,000 feet. So they'll live like they spend their daytime 1,000 feet below the surface, and they'll rise uh around dusk time. They'll rise up to the surface and they'll feed and they'll feed within that like 250 to 300 meter range. And the lanternfish, they're a deep sea fish, so they're not much is known, like really known about them. But this could account for 65% of all deep sea biomass uh, in the oceans. So that's quite a chunk.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, it makes sense because we've covered mostly all of the deep sea uh, oiters. I don't think we have too many left
Yeah, I don't think there are a whole lot that are still.
in terms of like full on oiters. Like yeah, there's gonna be some entomomorphs that are deep sea, like the anglerfish and things of that nature. But
Yeah.
besides that, we don't have a whole bunch of deep sea fish. But that's gonna cover it for this myctophiform group, our lanternfish. Alex, I'll sauce it over to you for our lampreforms.
Yes, sir. So our lampreforms is our next group that we're looking at today. This is a pretty broad group. It includes the crestfish, oarfish, ribbonfish, and the opahs. OPAH, opah. There's 7 distinct families um, that include 12 genera and 20 species altogether. So a lot fewer species, but the different groups are very distinct from one another. Sorry. Um, so they're kind of united in anatomy and phylogeny, even though they're very different. They look very different, but they're also similar. It's kind of that funky how the phylogeny fits into the tree.
It's kind of like how armadillos and sloths are closely related. The opah looks nothing like an oarfish, but somewhere along the line they did.
Yeah. They are pelagic feeders, similar to the lanternfish. Um, they stay well above the seafloor, but they're also pretty deep in the water, up to about 1,000 meters deep. Typically brightly colored as adults. They can have some very nice bright red and orange fins. And like we said, their body plans vary greatly, but they are mostly compressed laterally. So they are compressed side to side. They're very skinny, but they'll be kind of taller, and typically some of them can be very long. They're occasionally divided into 2 groups as bathysomy and taniosomy based on their body plans. So that, like you can see the picture that Tyler found here for us. Some of the group has this very kind of flat, but like,
Very disc shaped.
yes, very disc shaped. They're very round, but not round in the typical sense when you think of round being like wide. So our first, I believe, yeah, these are the families. Okay, our first family is the family Veliferidae. These are the sailfin moonfish. They tend to live in shallower coastal waters versus the deep ocean. They're much smaller than their relatives, only reaching about a foot in length. Tyler's pulled up a nice picture for us here. You can see why they're kind of called the sailfin moonfish, because they've got a very tall, long dorsal fin, as well as a very long ventral fin. As I said, their body plan is much taller rather than elongated, and they're actually capable of retracting those dorsal and anal fin anterior rays. So that front ray, they're able to retract it, kind of bring that fin downwards. I'm sure it makes them a little more be able to cut through the water a little more efficiently, um, rather than having that sail kind of posted up. I'm sure it creates a little bit of drag. Our next is the group Lampredae. These are the opah, which are also known as sunfish, moonfish, cowfish, or kingfish.
Not to be confused with like the other sunfish.
Yeah, there's another. It's called the ocean sunfish that is not related to these ones. We'll talk about them later. They are great. They're so dumb, but
Alex says they're great, but I haven't found a single good thing about them.
yeah, they're great because they're so bad. It's
Yeah,
like they've gone so far that they've actually become funny. It's great because it's kind of funny how they exist.
yeah. It's the laughter is why are they a thing because they
Yes,
shouldn't be anymore.
yes. But getting back on topic, in Lampredae there were originally 2 species, but then they were further divided back in 2018 because their geographic ranges are more restricted. They are covered in minute cycloid scales that give them a very iridescent guanine coating, or they're with an iridescent guanine coating, guanine being a protein.
Guanine's
They
a
could,
nucleotide.
I
Well, I
believe,
guess
yeah,
guanine is the G nucleotide.
I believe so, yeah. Um,
But I guess
a
it's a what? Those are peptides, or no? They're nuclear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So it's
they're
just a
they're
peptide coating.
they're nucleic acids,
Yeah.
but they're like the nitrogenous bases, and a lot of proteins are based in nitrogen.
Yeah. But either way,
We'll have to look that up.
it's guanine.
Yes,
It's a protein,
yes,
or
yeah.
at least an amino acid.
Yes, but they vary in size. Some species only being about 3.5 feet, but they can get up to over 6.5 feet and can weigh over 200 pounds. So they can get quite large. They closely resemble butterfish, but they are not related at all. I do not know what a butterfish is.
I got you. I'll find it.
Tyler can find one. Something pretty cool about them, though, is that they are capable of exhibiting full body endothermy, which means they can actually be warm blooded. Um, okay, that is a butterfish.
In shape, it's similar.
Yeah.
It's like a silver version of it, but
Okay.
not quite the same.
Okay. But with that endothermy, they do that through a specialized brain tissue, and using their pectoral muscles, the metabolism, they're able to kind of warm themselves from the inside. But they are not a homeotherm the way that birds and mammals are, where they actually use that internal body temperature, and they kind of regulate it to a specific temperature.
No, they just keep their body temperature higher than the water around them.
Yeah. Um, but that is all for that family. So our next family is Lophotidae. Not a ton about these guys. They are elongated and ribbon-like in appearance, typically silver in color. They're often found in the tropics and subtropics. Um, there you go. They're pretty much all dorsal fin. Looks like.
Yes.
And they actually, in their extant genera, they do possess ink sacs within their cloacas, and they use them very similarly to cephalopods as kind of like an escape mechanism where they will eject that ink and to kind of confuse and block the view of predators, and then they're able to escape. The next family is the Radiocephalus. These are also known as the taper tails. These are found in the central and eastern Atlantic and the eastern Pacific Oceans. They can grow up to 30 inches in length. Not a ton about these guys beyond that, unfortunately.
They're relatively new.
Okay.
Type species was found in 1917, and there was another species found in 2018.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense, them being deep sea fish as has kind of been the typical kind of standard with the deep sea fish. They are not as well researched as we would like them to be, so that we could share more with you. Our next family is Trichopteridae. These are also known as the ribbon fish. They're going to be similar in body style to the Lophotidae because they have a high dorsal fin that occupies the entire back. There you go. So similar in that they're kind of elongated, but different. And the dorsal fin is much more. It kind of makes sense why they're called the ribbon fish, because their fins look very ribbon-like. And they kind of thin and wispy. They live in deep waters, but they are not bottom feeders. Very rarely are they found alive due to their habitat being that deep ocean, and they're not super big, so it's hard to find a living specimen. They lack an anal fin, and if the caudal fin is present, it is very small. As you can see on the picture that Tyler pulled up, that caudal fin, which is typically like the tail fin, there's barely anything there.
It's like a ribbon at the end of the
Yeah,
fish.
comes down to a very small point, and there's just like a little tuft at the end. It looks like. Um, they tend to have very small pectoral fins and pelvic fins, and they are either only several rays or one long ray.
This specific example has several rays
Yeah,
and like
but
a little
they're very
wispy beard.
Yeah, very long and wispy. Not really for swimming. I'm guessing their primary swimming is either pulsating that dorsal fin or just kind of moving their whole body, kind of using their whole body the way most fish use their tail, just their tail.
I would assume as well.
Yeah. And then our last family for today is Regalicidae. This is the oarfish. So these are large, extremely long pelagic fish. Tyler's put up a picture here of one that's probably 20 some feet long.
Good question.
They are typically found in tropical, but up to temperate waters, but it is very rarely seen, even for how large they are.
This was a 23-foot specimen, by the way.
23-foot specimen. Okay. The giant oarfish, which I'm guessing is what is pictured here, this is the largest bony fish. They can reach up to 8 meters or 26 feet in length. So this one here being 23 feet is almost maxed out, but they can get quite large. They are considered game fish, but they have a small commercial presence, probably just because they're kind of hard to see, hard to find. Really not a food fish because their flesh actually is a very gelatinous consistency. And they are probably thought to be a source of the old tales of sea serpents, and are known in some folklore as harbingers of doom, as they often wash ashore before some disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis. And that will finish us up for today's lesson.
Yeah,
That is
kind of quick.
all.
I wasn't sure how quick we get through it when I layered out the episode. So we could have done another group, but it's no big deal. We have plenty of stuff still to cover for today.
Yes, sir.
I'll throw us into our amazing species for the week. And I'm sorry, guys. There's just not many endangered fish that we covered today. All of the lanternfish and all of these lampreforms we covered are of least concern or data deficient in according to the IUCN. So I didn't really want to cover least concerned fish. So, with it being Shark Week this week, we're going to cover, I believe I picked the scalloped hammerhead, did I not?
Yes, sir.
We're covering the scalloped hammerhead. Hammerheads are one of my favorite sharks. I don't know about
Yeah,
you.
they're pretty. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, besides they're like number 2. Angel sharks are up there. Tiger sharks and sand tigers are cooler than tiger sharks, but that's not
Yeah.
important. Anyway, scalloped hammerheads are critically endangered according to the IUCN, with their most recent evaluation being in 2018, published in 2019, and their justification is that the global population structure varies. Males move across ocean basins while females only move regionally, and it is a target catch as well as a bycatch in commercial and small scale long line and other forms of fishing in these fisheries. And they keep them for their meat and their fins. Obviously, Eastern medicine sharks are highly sought after for shark fin soup and a variety of other Eastern medicine type things.
Yeah.
But
It's saying here at the time of publish, they went from a near threatened, like low risk species in 2000 all the way to critically endangered as of 2018. So their population dropped pretty rapidly.
yeah, we're saying above an 80% reduction over 3 generation length, which is 72.3 years.
Yeah. They do have a longer generation length, being about 24 years. So it takes them a while to reach adulthood, which typically does not
Does
help.
not bode well.
No, does not help species when it comes to recovering from population decline.
These guys, I don't know if I've covered this to start. I typically cover the location. I don't think I did this to start. But they're found in coastal waters all over the world.
Throughout the tropical and
Yeah,
temperate regions.
yeah, tropical temperate from like the coasts of like almost like New York and Maine in the U.S. Coast of Portugal would be like their furthest north reach, and they go all the way as south as like the southern tip of Brazil
Yeah.
and South Africa.
Yeah, Southern African. Yeah, the Eastern African coast, Madagascar, the northern, pretty much everything but the southern coast of Australia, and then up through Japan into the Koreas.
As I said, they're like a target and bycatch in a lot of uh, small scale fisheries. The main product traded is the fins. Uh, Hammerheads are one of, if not the main shark species for fin trade, and one of the preferred species for shark fin soup. And they also use other things: meat, liver, oil, skin, cartilage, and jaws. So that sharks have that fatty liver, right, Alex?
Yeah, it's
That
a very oily
yeah, I remember
liver.
dissecting the little what would do a dogfish
Yeah,
in
dogfish shark.
in vertebrate zoology, and that was gross. Just
Yeah,
touching the liver, it's just all
very slimy and slippery because it's oily.
yeah. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of conservation actions in place. There's not really any recovery plan or monitoring scheme because most of this is a fishery thing and we're just overfishing them. That also being said, there's not a lot of external factors encroaching on them, similar to how I talk about other things, where it's like, oh, you know, the deforestation and the herbicides are seeping into the water sources. There's not a lot of that going on either. This is just humans being humans and overfishing.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Alex. Feel free to.
That is all I have for them. Pretty much covered all the bases, like Tyler said. Really, not there's been a number of proposed legislation, but a lot of it has been kind of set aside, unfortunately. Even based on evidence such as this.
Yeah. The recommendation is that landings be prohibited. Catching it or fishing for it is illegal as well as I don't know how that really works though. Like if you
Like
catch
you
if you
can't specifically target this
yeah, I
shark.
know that, but like if you obviously you'll see it breach before if you're like on a boat, you'll see it breach before it lands on the boat. Do you just cut the line?
I mean, that's kind of what it seems like. I mean, typically that's what you do anyways because you don't want to get bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's typically what that kind of means is you can't specifically target
Hmm.
these sharks. Really,
Yeah,
how
but
you would.
I don't know the safest option about that. Obviously, like not landing it is the safest option for you because you're limiting the amount of like the risk of shark bite. But at the same time, like you taking it out of the water to remove the hook doesn't do the shark any favors,
No.
and you cutting the line before you land it doesn't do the shark any favors either.
Yeah, because then it's got to
Then it's got a metal
manage.
hook in its mouth. Gotta
Yeah, and it's
manage
got a whole.
bacterial infection and everything.
Yeah.
Man, deep questions here on Life the Complete Story.
Yeah.
Anyway, Alex, what do you have for our most wanted this
Yes,
week?
sir. So our most wanted, I went the total opposite direction of anything we talked about today. So we're going. It'll tie into last week a little bit with our ecology encyclopedia because it is typically a wetland plant. This is the purple loosestrife. It is a wetland plant. Grows
This one.
very.
Why you gotta pick the pretty ones?
They look nice, but they are very invasive. They typically grow, yeah, with this very conical shape. You get these nice bright purple flowers, but they spread incredibly rapidly. They cover up most of North America as well as nearly every Canadian province. Um, they can produce as many as 2 million seeds in a growing season, which then they create very dense stands of purple loosestrife, which outcompetes native plants for habitat, resources, things like that. Um, and because of that, also it really changes a lot of the functions of the ecosystems that they fall into, um, reducing things like nesting sites, shelter, food for birds and other animals, decreasing overall biodiversity. Your standard stuff that is a big problem with invasive species, especially invasive plants. They get relatively tall for a wetland plant, between 60 to 120 centimeters tall. They average between 1 and 15 flowering stems. So a younger plant is probably only going to produce one or two of these stems that produce flowers, while an older plant is going to create a lot more. And they have adapted to uh, shorter growing seasons and colder weather in the northern regions where they are found. Typically, in those areas, they are smaller and flower earlier um, than in southern areas. But they are still they can be very pervasive. They like very wet areas, and of course, as we talked about last week, with wetlands being very sensitive ecosystems as it is a problem um, when these start to take over, and they are quite persistent. Over as they get older, they grow a very strong taproot that actually becomes more of like a woody material instead of like your typical what we would call an herbaceous or like a softer tissue. Um, and thus it's able to really use that to anchor in, store nutrients over long periods. It can survive by producing root tissue that exchange gases while submerged in water, which is why it's able to survive in wetlands as well as areas that flood frequently. But that is most of what I have for them. They were introduced in the 1800s in North America as an ornamental plant, of course, um, as well as for beekeeping because they do produce a lot of flowers. And then they were found in soil that was used for ship ballast that was then discarded. And then it very rapidly spread throughout the northeastern United States and southeastern Canada, um, reaching as far north and west as Manitoba.
Awesome.
Yeah, but that is most of what I have on them. Like a lot of very invasive plants, they just come in, take over, form very big monocultures that really don't let anything else grow.
Hmm. Do be careful though if you see a similar plant. It could be native plants like fireweed or
Yes,
blue vervain.
yes, there are some very similar looking native plants, so that's where it is important to make sure that you do your best to specifically determine what it is before you try
And
try to remove it.
nowadays, there's plenty of um, what is it called? Citizen science apps,
Yeah, like phone apps.
iNaturalist, Seek, things of
Picture
that
this.
nature.
Yeah.
Picture, yeah, they. I have, I think, two on my phone at all times.
Yeah, I have Seek and Picture This on my phone,
Yeah,
on both my personal phone as well as my work phone, and I use them all the time. They're pretty good. Of course, there's nothing better than getting out a field guide that has a whole lot of information, very
I don't
specific
think
pictures. I
I
don't
have mine on
know.
my bookshelf behind me. I know
Yeah,
Alex
mine,
does too.
my
So
yeah, I've got some somewhere. I can't see them from where I'm sitting right here,
I
but
think between the two of us, we have the full Audubon set. So,
just we're pretty close. We've got a lot of them.
but that's gonna do it for our most wanted for the week.
Yes, sir.
Little switch up on here, guys. Typically, we do cover something similar, at least. Maybe not the same family or order we're talking about for the day, but something in the realm of. Today, we're doing a plant with a fish, but such is life. We'll move on
Yes.
into our ecology encyclopedia. Um, and you know we talked about oarfish today and how oarfish are the harbingers of doom. They wash up on shore. Most recently, before the 2011 tsunami in Japan, that caused like the earthquake that caused the tsunami that caused all this not cool stuff over in Japan.
Yeah.
There was about 20 oarfish that washed up onto the shore within the 2 years prior to that incident. So that's kind of like the folklore has some supporting details. But today's ecology encyclopedia is on plate tectonics.
Yes, sir.
So for those that don't know, the Earth sits on plates that shift and move. You know that's and when different motions happen, different things occur. Uh, I'm sure Alex is waiting to steal the screen from me so he can pull up an
I'm
image.
stealing screen. Yes. There you go.
There you go. So there's 13-ish plates, I think.
I don't know for sure. Um,
There's like a dozen main plates. And there's a
yeah.
whole bunch of smaller plates.
Yes. And these you can see where the plates all connect. These are called fault lines. These are the areas where you primarily see things such as earthquakes occur, and because of that, also you see a lot of volcanic activity, which is kind of where I was going when I found this in College Encyclopedia, because on those areas, you can see we're kind of right here in the center of the screen, the Pacific Plate. This is typically referred to as the Ring of Fire. So the vast majority of the world's volcanoes and volcanic activity occurs along the edges of the Pacific Plate and the plates kind of next to it in this area surrounding the Pacific Ocean. Um, and it's not always a bad thing, um, because volcanoes allow for movement of a lot of those kind of heavier metal nutrients from the core of the earth, things like iron, but also like those very what would be considered like minor nutrients or trace nutrients. Your different metals like magnesium. I'm sure even some phosphorus.
Mostly trace metals.
Yeah, mostly trace metals. I was trying to think. And in a lot of those places as well, that volcanic ash, because it is so rich in a lot of those trace nutrients, after an eruption, it actually causes an explosion of greenery. So actually, while if Tyler, you want to add a little more, I will find a picture of Mount St. Helens, the
Yeah,
major
I'll
eruption.
give I'll talk more about the geology behind it, the things that happen, while he pulls up some more ecological things. But so there's different ways these plates interact with each other. Uh, when you have those earthquakes, that's the two plates pulling away from each other, causing a trench or a fissure between the two plates. You can have them pushing into each other, where they go straight into each other, and that causes them to kind of like push up, and that's how we get mountains. And most notably, the Indian subcontinent pushing into the rest of the Eurasian plate, creating the yep.
The Himalayan mountains.
Yep, I almost said the Andes. I'm like, that's not right.
No.
The Himalayas, that is the Asian subcontinent on the Indo-Australian plate pushing into the Eurasian plate. You have things like subduction, where one plate goes over top of another one and kind of like pushes it down, pushes the one plate down more.
Yeah.
And there's different things like there's oceanic plates versus continental plates, right?
Yeah. So like with the Pacific Plate that had showed up, there's really not no major land masses on the plate itself. Is pretty much all just that ocean, just the Pacific Ocean. Um, but along those edges is where you see a lot of island formation. Um, so like the island of New Zealand is right along between the Indo-Australian plate and the Pacific Plate. I believe the Galapagos Islands fall into that.
Yeah, that's on the opposite side of the plate, but yes.
Yeah. Yes. But you also get things like hot spots where there's kind of like a thin spot in the plate where some activity is able to work its way through. So the Hawaiian Islands are the prime example of a hot spot where there's like a thinning of the plate. So you are able to get some volcanic activity even though you're not on the edge. And because of that, it's typically different. Like the Hawaiian volcanoes typically do not have the explosive eruptions like Mount St. Helens, which I found a picture of. So back in the very late 1970s, early 1980s, Mount St. Helens, which is in the state of I believe Washington in the United States, had a catastrophic eruption, which I'll pull before I'll do that. I'll pull up a picture of the the volcano before and after. There you go, before and after it erupted. So you can see this on the left is what it originally looked like. Typical mountain, very tall, kind of conical shape, and then on the right side is is where it was after the eruption. So what happened was. It had such a pressure buildup from the magma and gases and everything that actually caused like the whole one side of the mountain to like separate and then cause a massive landslide, which then directed a lot of the force from the eruption laterally instead of vertically, which is really what led to the picture I found after, where a lot of the vegetation was pretty much just, if it wasn't burnt, it just from the pressure of the blast was just knocked over. So you can see like for miles, trees and other vegetation just not like it looked like a bomb basically went off. So anything is all was pushed away from the volcano. But you can see in the picture I found after a short 14 years, which
And vegetation, that's not long at all.
yeah, in nature time is not very long. You can see how quickly the area started to recover, especially since a lot of the recovery is these woody species. You can see a lot of pine, spruce and pine within that area, which typically your woody species are not that fast. Um,
No, but those
as
trees look like they're
recovery.
about person size at this point.
Yeah, so they're growing very quickly, um, which is a good thing in the sense of the recovery of the area. So they're very good places to study things like secession, because
Yeah, let's talk
the
about that next week.
yeah, we'll talk about succession next week and kind of how the formation, like I mentioned, the islands that form from the volcanic activity, over time, underwater volcanoes as they erupt and that magma cools, it kind of keeps building on top of itself to a point where eventually it then comes out of the ocean and then keeps getting bigger and forms islands. Um, and then from there, it starts out as a big rocky island, and then over time they become covered in plant life and then animal life, and it's very cool how that whole process just works itself out. But like Tyler said, those plate tectonics do influence a lot of the geology, like earthquakes, tsunamis. So they cause natural disasters, but in the wake of that, you get you can get a lot of good and
Yeah.
the recovery of the ecosystems, and why also like why specific biomes are in specific areas. And when we talk about when in our past episodes when we did a lot of our going looking through the fossil record, why you find similar fossils in two different continents because of the movement of these tectonic plates. At one point, pretty much all of the land mass of the Earth was in one supercontinent called Pangea, and then it has since spread out. And you can kind of see it when you look at the coastlines, like the coastline of eastern South America and Western Africa, almost look like they could fit together. It's because they did.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in another episode too. We can talk about that. We can talk about that next week, and we'll talk about succession the week after. And
Yeah,
boom.
there you go.
That's less work we have to do later on.
Yeah, yeah. It's always a pain to come up, or always a struggle to come up with a good idea for our ecology
Yeah.
encyclopedia. So we got a couple there on deck for you guys. But that is all I have for this. Not a super duper interesting topic. Not a ton. I mean, we could probably talk about it more, but we just wanted to give you a high level overview of how it affects a lot of the nature that surrounds it.
Yep. But once again, that's that. Today was we did a Life Complete Story podcast. Make sure you follow us on Spotify at Life Complete Story. It's primary. That's our primary source for the podcast. Our secondary source will be YouTube at Life the Complete Story. Make sure you subscribe to that page as well. That page gets our long form content like this, as well as our short form clips that we post, which are highlights from within. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Life Complete Story. That's where you get primarily clips.
Some more amazing species
Some more
throughout
amazing
the
species
week.
because a lot of these groups that we'll talk about, not right now necessarily, but later on down the line, they have a lot of amazing species. And we just can't cover all of them in the episode that we allocate to that group. And make sure to follow us on Facebook at Life the Complete Story. That's more for the research side of things, how we do our nature in the news. Expect more of that type, as well as to send us an email at lifecompletestory@gmail.com for questions, comments, suggestions, things of that matter. We look at that whenever we can, and we will bring your comments to light.
Yes, sir. And did you mention as well Instagram at Life Complete
Yes.
Story?
Yes.
And there you get the similar clips and amazing species as well.
And I promise that by the next episode, we will be available on more platforms.
Yes, sir. Yep, we're looking to expand a little bit, reach out to more of you folks. We would love to share what we are learning and trying to teach you all, through our trek through the tree of life.
Yes. And share with your friends.
Yeah.
You find it interesting. I'm sure they'll find something interesting, and it's just we're sharing the tree of life, and we're gonna make a tree of followers.
Yes, sir.
Alex, set us away.
Yes, sir. As we always say, keep on learning. You learn something new. You'll never know what you find interesting. But thank you for joining us for another episode of Life: The Complete Story. We will see you again next time.